Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the penultimate story of K9, The Last Precinct, written by Sydney Armstrong and S.P. Klaus, and is directed by James Bogle, who actually makes his last story for the K9 series in this adventure. Now, this story is structured extremely strange and bizarre. It starts off basically as if there's a missing episode that we haven't seen in it. It's really oddly placed because this is the penultimate story. We also had a story in the last episode, Angel of the North, seemingly tying into the finale, as we know the Covens would become the main villain because they're in the title of the last two episodes. So here it just feels like there's a kind of a lull moment, kind of like the calm before the storm, if you will. But I don't know, I feel like this episode not only is it continuing on from an episode we have not seen, but also it feels like this episode and the previous episode should be swapped around because of the bizarre way it's plotted. Of course, I haven't seen the finale yet as I'm recording this, so I don't know if it actually plays into a big part of it or not, but it is very strange. However, this story does have a lot of new elements into the series that can be they're kind of interesting. It deals more into the parents of our characters and the relationship between parent and child, as this story is that's the story's main focus, if you will. So, yeah, the story starts off, as I stated before, as seemingly there's this strange... It has nothing really to do with this episode, actually, but this scene seems really oddly put in, where it seems like Darius has just... he has discovered something, a strange material, and with K9 and Griffith scanning it using their equipment, they realise that it is part of Juxon skin. Jetsons, of course, were the villains in the first episode, and I believe they appeared in the second episode as well. So they were essentially the first recurring monsters of the K9 franchise. And you feel like, right, we brought that up, so that's going to be important now. Also, it does feel very strange because that was never mentioned in Angel of the North. It seems really strange. It just sort of gets mentioned. But it actually has nothing to do with this story. In fact, Darius at this time is kind of distracted as he sees some newsreel, and there seems to be some sort of, not a terrorist organisation, but a heavily protesting riot of complete individuals. I can't remember what the group calls themselves, but essentially they believed in the old order of things, where instead of having these having the department and the RoboCops basically control everything, they have human beings basically working on all functions of society. And this clearly takes a dig at Darius, and Starkey and Georgie kind of wind Darius up at some point, but Darius is clearly distressed, and he actually runs off at one point after Starkey makes a really out of character remark. I mean, I know the characters have this kind of butt-head relationship, but Starkey here is really unlikable. It's really strange, and it just goes to show the failure of this franchise. Our characters, especially the main kids, it just really seems odd and out of place. The remark, I can't remember what he says, but it's something that's like K9 scanned him for his brain cells. You can clearly see he's distressed about something, and Starkey still kind of like pushes him. At this point, I really didn't care about Starkey in this episode, which isn't very good when you consider he's not only one of the main characters, but he's essentially the main character, and he is in this series is coming full forth into the finale in a bit. But that being said, a department robot tries to get into Griffiths' house, and when Griffiths refuses, they actually storm in. But it turns out that it's not actually a robot, or at least not the main one. It turns out it's a human in disguise, and they've basically taken siege in Griffiths' house. Because you see, his house, if you weren't aware by this point, is actually an old Blandon police station, designed originally in 1963, which is a reference to Doctor Who's first ever episode. And essentially, what's happening is that this organisation, which actually made out of old police officers back before the department became fully in power in Britain, are basically have taken this Precinct, taken all of our characters as hostages, essentially plan to keep everybody there and use it as a threat. They know that Griffith is a scientist that works for the department, and he basically is holding him hostage and is working with, talking to Georgie's mother on a systematic comm to try and get out his demands. But there's something interesting with the leader of this rogue group of police officers. The main one is named as Henry Pike. He is the father of Darius Pike, one of our main characters, and that is essentially where the heart of the story is. This story is a Darius-focused story, and in that department, it still doesn't really work. The great point about a story like this is that we can see characters who are estranged, and either Darius could learn to appreciate his father in some regard, or learns that his father is somebody who's not worth the time. But the thing is, the story doesn't really know what to do with this premise, and so what we have is, at the start of the story, Darius being angry at his father, and we then get a scene in which Darius, Georgie and Starkey are talking about their parents, and they're like discussing something because Georgie learned something about her mother, which we'll get on to later on. K9 makes a kind of remark that's like, parents just want their kids to listen and kids just want their parents to listen. It's essentially, you're all just like making the same demands to each other, and the situation just doesn't make any sense from a logistics point of view. And our characters like laugh it off and stuff. And that's really only what we get about the Darius's and his father's subplot. It seems like the story was originally written as a establishment of how the police system works, and also we get to learn about something later on. But the writers realised that maybe that didn't have enough sting to it, so let's make him Darius's father, which we've learned at this point. He has some sort of strange relationship with his parents that has left him in the custody of Griffith. In fact, it's established in the story that Pike didn't even know that his son was there. It was a coincidence, and it's really strange. We also get to learn like these. I don't actually like the little there's little bits of dialogue that hints onto the history of the characters. For example, Henry Pike actually used to work in this police station, and Darius basically explains that Harry knows this building like the back of his hand. He used to work here when it was a functioning police station. That's kind of interesting. There's not much of that to keep an audience going. It feels like that's only really there as advertisement for the story rather than what the story is actually focused on. By the end of the story, Darius has a moment with Griffiths where he's like, you've got to talk to him and hug it out with your father. But we don't see any growth. We don't see any development of the character. Darius just forgives his father by the end of the story without any real anything really resolved in their relationship. It's very hard to get a grip on the characters. But that being said, there is a kind of interesting element to this story, which is actually kind of like set up and maybe is played off in later episodes. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not holding my breath knowing the quality of this series. Essentially, Darius, his father, makes demands, and Georgie's mother tries to not give away that she is the mother of one of the children, and is like, right, we'll swap hostages, me for one of your hostages, presumably the girl in the crew. And it's revealed that Henry Pike knows who Georgie's mother is. In fact, he's done a lot of research on her and found out that she was the sole decision maker, if you will. She was the one that finally got to pick on whether we should keep the police officers in charge, or we should replace them with these robots, essentially taking all of their jobs. And this shocks Georgie to the core. This whole world, this whole terrible situation where these robots are going around arresting people wherever the department feels like it, can be singled out as being Georgie's mother's fault. That seems like a really big deal. The story seems to set up something here, and we see Georgie as like, I do love my mother, but that is really messed up. She basically lost a huge amount of people's jobs in exchange for the department, for people mainly in power who wants to silence the minorities into power. It was her decision to essentially do that. And Georgie's mother doesn't even see any fault in it. She's like, I still stand by my decision to put these robots in power. It was for the greater good. So that kind of shooks Georgie to her core. Again, the story isn't really about that. It seems to set up, so whether this will play into the finale, who's to say? We'll wait until we get to see the finale. But then we also got another twist in the story. It turns out that the robots are actually being enhanced with alien DNA, being enhanced by Thorn, who also makes an appearance. This is something that has been established, that Thorn has been taking some of the robots, I can't remember the robot, the CCPD, and turning them, and trying to alterate them to make them better, essentially killing machines. And it's here that's established that some of the advanced technology inside their units is because they have enhanced alien technology, and a majority of robots out there have been out there to cause havoc. This has been established within the series before, with that one, I can't remember, Mutant Copper, that's the one, where you see one of the robots and it seems to be gaining some sort of human intelligence as Thorn has been altering its circuitry for try and put into to make it a much more better machine, essentially, if it will. Here, it seems to set up a plot element. This technology is essentially making these robots a much more effective killing machine. However, here the robots seem like robots like in any other story. The robots just seem like generic stormtrooper kind of villains, and the ones that Thorns have enhanced seemed very little different to the ones that we actually see around. It also begs the question, which it could be again another setup for the finale, is how was Thorn able to do this after he was caught and sentenced, and not sentenced, but he was caught by Georgie's mother about the mutant copper that Thorn was actually altering these machines, which is against the department's policy. You can't alter one of these RoboCops. So how did he get away with this again? Maybe the main villain, maybe the leader of the department is actually working with Thorn, keeping secrets behind Georgie's mother. Who's to say? But again, it's another setup for something which might play into a role in the finale. Who goes to figure? But but Henry Pike uses this to his advantage as he's developed a disease, if you will, that will only affect the Robocoppers with the alien database. It makes them essentially useless to the department's rule and puts them all in the control set of Henry Pike. I actually like this kind of plot line because it's kind of like Henry, he's basically gone too far into this mindset that essentially he's become the closest thing you can to a terrorist in the K9 franchise. And essentially he's gone so far that he's actually using the thing he hates the most. The fact that, the department are using these robots, he's now using them for his own benefits. That I actually think is a really interesting dynamic here. But K9 points out that the disease is is unstable, and he's basically suggests that everybody keeps away from any infected Robocoppers. And we see out throughout the story that the disease is unstable. This genetically enhanced alien disease, if you will, essentially turns them into machines that kill any human, regardless if they're supposed to protect them, if it's coming from the department's orders, if it's coming from Harry Pike's orders. Doesn't matter, it just they become basically slaughtering machines. Sadly, however, because of the childlike nature of the show, we don't actually see them kill anyone. There is a character that gets strangled at one point, but then he just gets up at one point and he actually warns our characters, be careful of them. And K9 and Griffith all get the team band up together to think of a plan, and they basically just come to the conclusion that the disease that they gave to the CCPD robot cops, the disease is genetically altered and is putting them into this mindset. So what if we try and put a pure case of the disease into a pure part of a disease into the machines? Then it will cancel out the new genetically enhanced DNA and everything will go back to normal. Griffith has the ability, has even the technology to create a pure version of this particular virus. However, it means that he would have to give up a particular component of his time traveling machine, meaning that if he wants to save the team, he will have to give up his chances of seeing his family again. I love the line in which which Starkey basically runs up to Griffiths and is like, you would give up your chances of seeing your family again. And Griffiths is just like, I am not losing one family to save, in the vain hopes of saving another. You're my family as well. This is my new family. I am not giving this up in the chance of maybe seeing my family later. There's a big, I could probably save him later, way later down. It's just mainly a setback. So he gives up his technology. He gives K9 making a pure form of this virus, to which K9 can blast them with a vaccine, if you will, and curing all of the local Robocops that are infected. And essentially that is the plot of the episode. The ending of it has a very somber bit moment where Georgie's mother is resting. Darius and Harry have this heart-to-heart moment, which I mentioned earlier, and Thorne is very insistent that we get into prison and stuff, whilst all of our characters are like, right, you've got to treat him with respect. He might be a villain, he might still be a baddie, and he's still going to jail for harm he's done, but he's done it in a good cause, and, he was just trying to get him and his many officers back in a job. He was but the department put him in a very sticky situation. He was just trying to make things right. So, treat them with a little bit of respect, with Thorne really not caring, essentially. But again, might be a teaser again to the finale. Who's to know? And that is the last Precinct. Overall, there are a lot of great elements to the story. This story feels like a half-finished jigsaw piece, which you can kind of see what the story is going for, what the actual picture is, but it's not capturing what makes this story beautiful. It's only basically got the outline of the jigsaw piece, but not actually anything in the middle. There's no heart, there's no soul to it. It just focuses on more of the plot element of it rather than the character and the heart of the story, making it a story which I think is a disappointment in a way. It's a disappointment in the sense that it had a good premise, it had great elements that it could build off, and it had potential with Darius and his father, and that could be a great stake in the relationship in the hero and the baddie, but nothing like that comes across here, and it seems like a waste of an episode. Also as well, that bit at the start feels really strange and odd and feels like you're missing an episode. I did have to pause when I watched this. It was like, what am I missing? What am I missing? I didn't miss anything. Okay. That isn't okay. That's strange. But yeah. So the last Precinct is pretty weak and sadly a missed opportunity for the franchise. So there you go, that's the last Precinct. So join me next time when Amy and Rory reunite with the Doctor as they introduce the Doctor to their friend, Mel's. I can't remember. Mel's? I can't remember. And she puts the Doctor on a mission. Why don't we just go back in time and kill one of the greatest dictators in history? So join me next time for Let's Kill Hitler and its prequel episode. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!